Double-sided, yeah, this can go around.
Both of them?
There's a single-sided one, but the rest are double-sided.
Okay.
Here's this. Okay.
You get this one, David?
Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today, this is Parshat Shemot, and we have the appearance of Moshe Rabbeinu. And so I want to talk about leadership and Jewish leadership. What is leadership about? So before I start, let me ask you guys what you think about that. I would like to know like what people think. Like, what is the qualities of a leader? What kind of does a leader look like? What are the qualities of a leader? Any thoughts about that?
Well, it says about Moshe, he was the most anava man who walked the face of the earth.
Okay, and
so I don't know what it all means.
Okay, but you think that has to do with leadership?
Anava would be a quality of a real leader.
Okay, very
Clearly.
good, interesting. Okay, Achud?
Depends on what type of leader you're talking about. Are you talking about someone in an authority position or someone not in an authority position?
Leadership means authority. That's what leadership means.
Yeah, not always.
Well,
I mean, you're saying people lead sometimes from from below.
Leadership. You have adaptive and technical leadership as well.
Okay.
So like there's
Okay, so tell me describe what's a leader look like in general. Okay, can you give me a?
I think a good leader is someone that he listens to the people around him, and then he makes the decision from there. And he also knows when to pass the baton. For example, like if we're out on a trip or something, and we go into the old city, I listen to David more than anybody else because he lives there and he's got the cards.
Be qualified, also. You're saying.
Right? Yeah. Like he's got to know when to who to give what responsibility.
Eliel?
I would say a good leader is someone who has the emotional and mental awareness that when he makes a decision, he knows where it's coming from. If it's coming from an objective, deeper point of view, rather than his subjective emotions that could easily be fleeting emotions or thoughts that could not be as worthwhile to make that decision.
So very interesting. Like he's sort of has a certain clarity of mind, not pulled after emotions. Yeah. That's very interesting also. Okay, anyone else? Okay, good. So let's talk about that. There's a lot to talk about here. So first I want to start with Rib. First I want to talk to myself a little bit, just together about this. What we've learned so far in Sefer Breshit. We saw some great leaders in Sefer Breshit. Like one leader we saw was Yosef, right? He became a big leader. He became the head of Mitzrayim. He ran the whole Egyptian empire, and he supported his family as they came in. So he was a great leader, right? And so what do you see about Yosef? Like what did you say? What qualities do you see about Yosef, who became this great leader?
He had a vision.
He had a vision. What kind of vision?
Well, the vision of where the country needed to go the next 14 years.
He had a prophecy.
Yes, but I'm using a leadership term, vision.
Okay, interesting.
But same.
But him it came out as prophecy, you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
No question.
Okay, so I'll tell you what I see in Yosef. I mean, Yosef, I see someone that, first of all, I think I like what you're saying. He is a dreamer, and he had this sort of like, he had dreams, and in his dreams, he already pictured himself as a leader, and he was like, also you see about, he was serving his father, he was close to his father, he learned Torah from him, right? And then you see what happens, he gets sold. When he gets sold, he gets sold to the house of Potiphar, right? And what happens over there? You see him rising to the top over there. He starts like becoming very helpful and useful in Beit Potiphar, right? And he becomes like the head of the household. He's running that. And then he gets put in jail, yeah?
The way Joseph was in Egypt leader, he was first doing the practical guy, the guy that do everything.
Very practical, yes, correct.
Not to say you need to do this, I make
not
this.
Passive, very, yes, very, very.
Do this.
Very good, yes. And you find further, even when he went to jail, then he gets sent down into jail. So over there, he also becomes like in charge of things. He starts, taking care of things, and the people come to him to interpret their dreams. So he's this leader that's sort of like, in all these situations, rises to the top. So it seems to me that what you see there, you see someone that, first of all, it fits very much with what Eliyahu just said also, that he could have been bitter and discouraged and depressed, and you can see instead that he is sort of like, he accepts the situation, even though it must have been very difficult for him, and he lives in the present. He does what he can to contribute, Beis Potifar is not the same thing as sitting in front of Yaakov Avinu and learning Torah, but there at least he could also do something. He could create order, do a good job, so he did that, and then same thing in the jail. So it's someone who's like, he doesn't get, he seems to like not get caught up in the past or in difficult or other things. Difficult thing happens, so don't bring him down. He continues to live in the present and to be responsible, sort of, and creative, right? He does stuff. That's you see in Yosef, and then finally he rises up to become the king of Egypt, and he's like so responsible and so on the job. Yeah.
I think that you could also say like a leader has a certain like kesher between the leader and the people. It needs to exist, and like Yosef was able to do that for the whole world and for the Egyptians and whatnot. But meanwhile, like Yehuda, for example, he sort of represented the brothers in a certain sense. You see that in the bracha, you see that in him sort of leading the brothers in the whole plot against Yosef.
Oh.
But on the other hand, when he and the brothers come to sit down, the Egyptians refuse to sit with him.
Mm.
So like he can't really be the leader of that generation because everyone, like, there's only a connection between him and the other Jews.
That's interesting. Okay, good. I wanted to say that also. I wanted to mention Yehuda too. He's another leader, you see. And what I noticed about him is that when they had a very bad situation, which Benjamin was like captive over there, and so first Reuben said, "Okay, I'll make sure it's done," and Yaakov is not satisfied. And then Yehuda steps up, and he says, "I'll make sure he gets out." And he puts himself whole on the line to make sure he brings back Benjamin. So there's this deep responsibility, right? And he goes and he gets it done. He gets Benjamin out. So that's two examples we see so far. So it's a very interesting thing, the leadership concept. So now let's look what Reb Tzvi Yehuda says over here. Let's go to Reb Tzvi Yehuda. So the first part of the page is blotted out, but I'll read it to you from my sefer, and then we'll go through it a little bit. So look at it starts with number 9 there. It's from Parshas Vayera. Yisrael Navi. Bevadai Avram Avinu. I need this. A second. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So, okay, Rav Tzvi. Bavade Avram Avinu. He says it's certain that Avram was very lofty in his humility. So what Rabbi Yehuda is going to do over here, he's going to follow the idea of humility as being the quality of leaders, which that idea which was brought up before. And he describes 3 great leaders in Jewish history. One of them was Avram Avinu. One of them was Moshe Rabbeinu. Third one is David HaMelech. So he's bringing from a medrash. Actually, let me show you the medrash first before I go into on the chart here on the pass out. See number 2. There's medrash Tehillim, and this is what he's saying now is based on this medrash from Yehuda. See number 2 there on the sheet, on the other handout.
Oh, I didn't see the other handout.
Kach Amar, Kach Kadosh Baruch Hu, Noten Gedol Tzadikim, B'mamatim et Atzmam. So Hashem gives greatness to the tzaddikim, and they, number 2, see it? Mm-hmm. And they make themselves small. So that's a quality of tzaddikim, that Hashem gives them greatness, gives them influence and power, and they make themselves small. Avram Amar, Vanochi Afer ve'efer. Avram said, I am dust and ashes. Moshe v'Aaron Amru, V'nachnu ma. Moshe and Aaron said, we are what? What are we? We are, and it sort of means like we are nothing. David Amar, Vanochi Tolat v'lo ish. David Melech said, I'm a worm and not a person. So the Medrash is saying that this is the quality of leaders. That what do? The tzaddikim. That Hashem lifts them up, and they make themselves small. So now look here at Reb Yehuda. It goes without certain that Avraham was very lofty in his humility. Like it says, Avraham said to Hashem, I am dust and ashes. In the Gemara in Chulin, it says that the quality of humility is something which is apropos, which is essential to the quality of the Jewish people. There's something about the Jewish people to which we have a connection to humility, and we see this in these leaders. We have 3 examples which reveal the height of humility. Avraham Avinu, Moshe, Rabbeinu, David Melech. Elahein shlosh madregot shel hitgalut in Yisrael. These are 3 revelations of the matter of Yisrael. So we see in our leaders, we see what the essence of the Jewish people are about. And we're saying here that it's humility. Going further, the more that it's revealed more the Jewishness, the more it's revealed more the humility. Avraham Avinu, let's go over here. Avraham Avinu, Adayin Eino Klal Yisrael, Elazera Garin, Haftacha. So Avraham Avinu, he's not Jewish people yet, but he's the seed of the Jewish people. He's the kernel and the promise of the Jewish people. That's all included in Avraham Avinu. But he's not the Jewish nation yet. He's the seed of the Jewish nation. Gariniyut hayesodit hazot munachat hanava shel afer ve'efer. In this seedliness, in this kernel stature of Avraham Avinu, you find humility. Shel afer ve'efer. To be toy charif shel nav. That's a very strong expression of humility. In Rashi and Chumash, he explains a little bit. So what does it mean, Avraham is saying, Ani afer ve'efer, I'm dust and ashes? So Rashi says, V'nochi afer ve'efer, Gvar haiti roa liyot afer ayidei hamalachim. I could have already been offered dust because of the kings, when I fought with the kings and I survived. Right? And ve'efer ayidei Nimrod, I could have been already ashes because Nimrod tried to burn me up. Lulei rachamecha sher amduli, if not for the compassion that stood for me. So Rashi, I think, is hinting at something, which is that the quality of humility is that whatever we accomplish, whatever we're able to bring out of our own qualities, our own talents, it's all because Hashem gives it to us. And our bodies are made of dust, and they could go back to dust. Our survival is dependent on Hashem, and our success is dependent on Hashem. So this type of sense that whatever I succeed, Avraham Avinu, even though he's a great person, great leader, he had an awesome following and influence, and amazing wisdom, he had this feeling like, Anachi afer ve'efer, as he's praying to Hashem, he says, I am dust and ashes, meaning to say that I didn't get here by myself. It's all because of you, Hashem. I could have been burnt up. I could have been destroyed in the wars. And here I am speaking to you. So I know that I'm not, I know that it's very far, it's brazen of me to speak to you. He's asking to get Sodom off, and when he's doing this, as he's speaking, he's asking that Hashem should forgive Sodom. And he says, Anochi afer ve'efer. So you see there this deep expression of humility. Who am I to speak to you? But Hashem, I'm still going to say what I think is I need to be saying. And then it goes further. Many generations after Avraham Avinu, which is a preparation for Klal Yisrael. Migiyim advarim ad shenienu la'am la'Hashem Elokeinu. It reaches the point we are Hashem's people. Through going out of Egypt and receiving the Torah. Oz etzel Moshe Rabbeinu nechdosh Avraham Avinu mofia gilo yoter elyon shel navad. Thereby Moshe we find even a higher revelation of humility. Hamitbateh b'milim v'nachnu ma. We are what are we and what are we? It means we are nothing. V'nachnu, what are we? That's what he says when they were complaining about the I think it was about the man, and they were starting up with Moshe and Aharon, and Moshe said, "But that you're complaining against Hashem, because me and Aharon we're nothing. There's nothing you can complain about. We're nothing." Aver ve'eferhu amnam bitu charif. He says, even though Aver ve'efer is something very strong, to say that I'm Aver ve'efer, that's a very strong expression of humility. Aval la'af v'efer yesh ezu metziut, but after and they exist. Lumat nachnu ma, we are nothing. Shu bittul metziut, akedat metziut. He says when Moshe Rabbeinu says we're nothing, it means I don't exist. Like my existence is totally contingent on you, Hashem, and I have no independent existence. So that's even a higher level of humility. Kol shemishtaqlelet yoter hofat hayisraeliyut. The more that it becomes Jewish, kach yoter meromemet ha'anava la'ela u'la'ela. The humility becomes more and more uplifted. Va'ish Moshe anav ma'od mikol adam asher al pnei adama. Ish Moshe was the most humble person in the earth. So what he's saying is that as Klal Yisrael is formed, now we're a Jewish nation. So then the humility that the individual can express, particularly the leader over here, it's something bigger. It comes from the Jewish nation as a whole as well. And so it's even higher than Avraham Avinu's humility. It's like a complete nullification. I think that this fits with Moshe Rabbeinu. That Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that he became the channel for the Torah. So a certain like complete nullification to Hashem, and he was able to bring down the Torah. So it's even a higher level. And now I'm going to skip that paragraph there. Hamadrega Shlishit after the next paragraph. Hamadrega Shlishit Hizu Shel David HaMelech Alav Shalom. The third level is David HaMelech. So even a higher level, because this is Klal Yisrael after they become a full nation in Eretz Yisrael, and David is the king. And now there's even a higher level of humility even than Moshe's. That's what the Medrash is saying, and Yehuda is explaining. And he said, "Vanochi tolat v'lo ish." I'm a worm and not a person. Shilo rak bittul erech shel metziut v'kirat metziut. This is not only nullifying himself in his existence and saying that I have no independent existence. Ela shinoi metziut v'hofat metziut acheret. He says I'm even worse than a person. Cherfat am uvazoi, cherfat adam uvazoi am. So let me explain to you here what it says in the Meforshim a little bit. First explains this, other Meforshim, Malbim, that David HaMelech was saying like this. He was having failures as a king, as a person. Things were not working out, and so he had this feeling of being like below a human being. Because if you look it's in Perikah Kaf Beit over here. So he talks about how our fathers, they trusted in you and you saved them. But me, I'm like a worm and not a person, like a bezoi. I'm like a rejected nation. So what it means is like this: that David HaMelech is expressing his feelings. He's saying that if I was a real person, so you would have answered my tefillas. I would have trusted in you and you would have saved me. And here, things aren't working out. I feel so dejected, so I feel like I must be lower than a person, like a worm. So the Medrash is saying, and Rabbi Yehuda is explaining this is the highest level of humility. He says, I'm like a worm in a sense, like worse than a person. And he says, and I also have a person that's a worm. If you insult him, he doesn't get insulted. A person, a bezoi am, I'm also insulted. Like in other words, I'm the lowest level. So he says that's even a higher level of humility than saying I'm nothing, because I'm lower than I'm supposed to be. So it's very interesting. So what happens here is, I just want to talk about this for a minute, and is that it needs a lot of explanation. This is a very deep matter. It's very fascinating. But you see the three levels here. You see, first is Avraham Avinu. He's this great humble person. He says, I'm like dust and ashes. In other words, I could have been burnt to ashes. I could have been, buried in the dust. In fact, I'm here because you kept me alive, Hashem. And now I want to pray to you. Avraham Avinu was the source of Klal Yisrael. He was like the basic midot, basic faith that from him came all that we build on. Moshe Rabbeinu was a higher level. Moshe Rabbeinu was already in the midst of the Jewish people that were formed already. Moshe Rabbeinu was the one to bring down the Torah. So Avraham Avinu is like the Derech Eretz, and Moshe Rabbeinu is Torah, the Torah Shebektav, which is going to come down, and Moshe is the channel for that because he has complete nullification. And then comes David HaMelech. So David HaMelech is after we're already the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael, with a king, with a government, with a king. And now David HaMelech is even a higher level of humility because it's also reflecting the humility of the nation. Because the group has a stronger quality than the single person. Now the single person reflects this group level of the Jewish nation. The Jewish nation is something very, very lofty. And he's saying, Anachi Afar Ve'efer. So it's interesting what this means. I'll tell you my thought about it. Like David Melech is talking about feelings. So it's not like he had a low self-esteem. It doesn't mean that. But it means he's saying how he actually feels. He means, at this moment, I feel like I'm less than a person. You're not responding to me, Hashem. I feel like I must be very low. And so what's happened now is David Melech, he's at the Torah Shabbat Peh level. And David Melech is like, how is the relationship which the new Jewish nation is forming with Hashem? And David Melech, he wrote Tehillim. It's all about feeling. It's all about this feeling of relationship. And he describes the up and downs inside himself. He describes his high feelings and his low feelings, his feelings of rejection, and how he strengthens himself and comes back to his sense of trust. And that, like, acknowledging of feelings and of feeling of inadequacy and failure and talking to Hashem about it and finding your way out of it, all that seems somehow, it's describing here in the Medrash, that's the highest level of humility, something higher about it. Moshe Rabbeinu was nullified. He was transcended the human level. David Melech went down into the human. He was part of Am Yisrael, in the human level, yet like living as a person, living with the feelings of a person, like working with them, and talking to Hashem about them, working them through, and then coming back. You see, and when he was out in interacting with the nation, he was totally humble, But in his private life, he had to work stuff through, And so that working stuff through seems to be like the highest level of it. So David Melech, it describes about him that he finished Masechtas and he taught them. So that's Torah Shabbat Peh. And he said, it says also, the Medrash, Rabbi brings all this. It says he sat on the floor when he taught Torah. They were taught into Torah Shabbat Peh. He was very humble. He was like humble with the Torah, and he was a national spirit. That's who he represented. Like, he was part of Am Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu was above us. Moshe Rabbeinu was bringing down the Torah from above. David Melech was down among us. So that's like the highest level of humility. A person also, he points out to Yehuda that when we come to V'yevarech David, when we're saying Pesukei Zimra, and we start quoting David, everyone stands up, because that's the quality of these great leaders, that they're so humble. The way they lead the people, everyone feels they stand up. It lifts up everybody, lifts up the whole group. There's something about a great leader. The humility of the great leader is what lifts up the whole group. So we'd stand up when we say V'yevarech David. It's very, very fascinating. Okay, so that's Rabbi Yehuda.
So you stand up when you say
V'yevarech David in the end of Pesukei Zimra. So now you see this sheet here. So
That's that one. That very last paragraph, I think. Is that where?
Towards the end, right before Az Yashir, yeah.
right before Asher?
Az Yashir.
Yeah.
Before the end. So, okay. So there's. So I want to say like this. So you see like this. You see that not only are leaders very humble, but the whole Jewish nation is humble. And this thing of humility is the key here. That there's something humble about the whole Jewish nation. That's our character. If you look, no, I'm skipping around a little bit. I didn't do it exactly in order. No, it's good. Fine. Let's start from number 1. Look at this. Atem tiyulim memlechas kohanim b'goy kadosh elu dvar masher t'deber al bnei Yisrael. So before we received the Torah, so Moshe told us this prophecy that we are a nation of priests. Yeah? Mamlechet kohanim. A nation of priests. What's a nation of priests? I just brought here what the Ramban says. He says it means a kingdom of servants. Because we're not all kohanim. It doesn't mean literally that we're kohanim. So he says servants. Now Rashi says, sarim, kamo da'at amar uvnei David kohanim. So Rashi learns that it means what's kingdom of priests, because they both are concerned. It doesn't mean priests, because there's only one set of kohanim. Not everyone's a kohen. So what do you mean we're a nation of kohanim, right? It says kohanim in the pasuk, but we're not all kohanim. So what do you mean you're a nation of kohanim? So the Ramban said it means servants, because I guess kohanim serve, But Rashi says it means princes. And he brings a pasuk. The Bnei David are kohanim, and the Bnei David, they were not kohanim. They were actually leaders. So this nation of kohanim means servants, and it also means leaders. So it turns out that the Jewish people we're all leaders. The Jewish people are leaders, and we are leaders. We're considered the light to the nations. And there's a quality of leadership that's inherent in the Jewish people.
So, according to the Midrash, the community of all leaders is a curse because that was what Eliyahu did to one of the communities that mistreated him and the other rabbi who were traveling. Was he blessed them that they would have many leaders. So therefore, by having many leaders, they've never had peace and tranquility.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I've read that. I think, David, I could be wrong, but I think that's referring to a time when there's like everyone's trying to be doing the same thing and trying to be in charge of the same thing. I think. So
I think it's describing like someone who's a poor leader. In other words, poor leaders clash, right? Whereas when you have good leaders, they become accepted and lead with humility.
And Rav Rothman maybe I think probably referring to a leader within your own specific realm and field.
Right. Very good. Very good. Nice. That's what I do want to bring out. In other words, the Jewish people. The truth is, we're all supposed to be leaders. That's the way it really works. The truth is, we're not supposed to be followers. We're supposed to be leaders. Maybe all people are on their way, but there's a special role of the Jewish nation of being leaders. And really, a good leader is the one who brings that out in all the people. Like I said, we all stand up when we say, "Vayivarech David," because a good leader is the one who's very, very humble. His leadership is not based on a desire to be stronger than someone else, or more have more control or power than someone else. It's more this like mission, feeling of mission that he has. It comes out of his humility, because that's what we're coming out here. That leadership has to do with humility. It's sort of paradoxical. You wouldn't think that leadership is humility, because the leader is the one who's most assertive, who takes on the most responsibility. But this is the idea that I want to bring out here in particular, is that the two things go together. The person that's very humble is the best leader. Why? Because he's humble in front of Hashem. He's really humble. He's not humble in front of other people. He's humble in front of Hashem. So therefore, when a person has a midah, that characteristic, then they are able to rise up and start taking on big responsibility, like Yehuda did, and like Yosef did. The humility that a person has actually brings them to a place of leadership. It's very interesting that it's not necessarily the charismatic person or the popular person that is made to be a leader. It's the humble person that's made to be a leader. And that is also the quality of all the Jewish people. All the Jewish people have this quality of being humble. Look at number 3. Lo merubchem mikol ha'amim chashak Hashem b'chem. Not because you are many, more multitudinal. You're a bigger multitude than all the nations. That's why Hashem desired you. That's not why. V'yivchar b'chem, and chose you. Ki atem ha'ma'at mikol ha'amim, because you're the smallest of all the nations. Now that's the pasuk. Now there's a famous chazal, very important chazal here, that says, they learn it like this. I quoted Rashi here. Look at Rashi. Kipshuto is a midrash. The midrash is like this: Fisha ein atem magdilim atzmechem, kashni mashpia lechem tova. Lefikach chashak Hashem bechem. Because you don't lift yourselves up when I give to you good. That's why I chose you from all the nations. Why were the Jewish people chose from all the nations? Because when Hashem gives them good things and gives them shefa tov, all kinds of success, they don't lift themselves up and become haughty. They actually make themselves small, because they feel small, that they got this great blessings and they great opportunities, and so the more they get lifted up, the smaller they get. So it turns out that's the quality of leader.
What does it mean to be haughty? To lift, what would be an example of lifting yourself up?
Actually, in this medrash here, let me just see. Does it say further? It basically, a person starts thinking of himself as the most important person, and he starts feeling more important than someone else. So what we have here is the Jewish nation, as a nation, and its leaders all the more so, they don't respond like that. They respond to a position of leadership with a sense of humility and mission. Responsibility. They feel very responsible to do their job. Like Ahihud said before, like a good leader is someone that he doesn't rush to call all the shots. He'll consult other people. He'll be learning, But when there's responsibility to be taken, and there has to be the final decision, so he's ready to make that, because he has this deep sense of responsibility and mission. And he's chosen for that. You see that, for example. Yeah. So what I'm going to say now is that the quality of the Jewish people is, in general, when we get raised up, when we get success, so then we start to make ourselves smaller. We start to serve more, because we realize that's what the success is about. It's not about the person starting to feel his power and his influence and wanting more of that or wanting to use it more. He starts to feel a sense of mission. So that's why humility has to do with leadership. I'll tell you about David Melech, something else about David Melech, interesting thing in this context, that David Melech was a shepherd. And he was actually the least status, had the least status of all the sons over there, of Yishai. One day he's out in the fields, as it says in the Tanakh over there. He's out in the fields watching the sheep, and a lion and a bear come to attack the sheep. So all of a sudden, David Melech finds this strength in himself, and he kills the lion and the bear with his hands. Right, something very unusual.
I thought a deer came and ran right in front of both of them. They both chased off the.
I don't know. I think that's what I just said. He was able to kill the lion and the deer. And then what happened later is, according to there's a Ramaz in the Vilna Gaon says this, he took that deer, and they were attacking not the sheep, not the deer, the sheep. They attacked the sheep. I don't know what you're talking about exactly, but they attacked the sheep, and he protected the sheep, and he killed the lion and the bear. So afterwards, he took the sheep and he shechted it, and he took the wool off the sheep and he made a cloak out of it. He had this cloak made out of wool, and he always wanted to remember that experience, because from that experience, he realized that he had some special quality. He felt he must have a mission, because what I did was supernatural, like killing the lion and the bear. And so then what happened later is that Goliath was coming against the Jewish people, and somebody to fight him. So he said, "Oh, that's why I got this message from Hashem. I'm supposed to do that. There's something about me. I have this talent." And so there's this sense of mission that you find in leaders. He wore the sheepskin to remember that there's something special about me that I have to ready to use when it's needed. So that's what the leaders have. They have this sense of mission, and the specialness that they have doesn't make them arrogant. It means that they feel they have to use it to serve Klal Yisrael, to serve Hashem.
But if you look at the political situation today, here, it doesn't seem to be very humble. It seems to be the opposite. It's about me. What do I do?
It's interesting. So, so we have one idea here, is that the Jewish people as a whole have a certain humility. And even I would say even now, I think you could see that. I think that even if you compare Medina to Israel to the rest of the nations, there's so many great qualities, and you find us doing chesed, and you find a lot of amazing qualities, and people see it also. I think they feel challenged by us. I think they're jealous of us. There's a certain humble spiritual quality to the Jewish nation, even in its imperfect state. And now, it isn't perfect. It's far from perfect, and without Torah, so that we don't bring out all of our best qualities. So not all of our nation, all of our leaders have Torah. But nevertheless, there's still a certain greatness. But the problem is we need Torah to bring out who we are. So that's the struggle we're having now. That's the problems. That's the ups and downs. But things are good. Things are great. Things are going to keep getting better. The darkness is just part of the process, But I'll tell you a couple stories. One story about a big tzaddik. His name was Reb Chaim Ozer Grodensky, I think his name was. So he lived in Vilna before World War II and during World War II. He was a famous genius. He was a great genius. He was one of the post-Gedor, one of the greatest scholars of the generation. They say he could write with two hands at once, two different letters at once. He had such amazing mind. So he was one of the greatest scholars of the generation. And he said about himself that when he got older, and he had this amazing intelligence and insight, when he got older, he started to do more and more kindness to people. And he became the center for whatever people needed. Communities, individuals, they all came to him, and he used to use his great intelligence and his great love of people and influence to help everybody that came his way in all kinds of communities, individuals. He became the main address for whatever any Jewish people need to help, until it came to World War II. And then what happened was that the Germans took over Poland, and Vilna where he lived was right between Poland and Lithuania, and it kept getting changed back and forth. Whoever was in power then, sometimes it was part of I think I mean Lithuania was part of what went back and forth Russia and Poland. That's what I mean. Lithuania went back and forth between Russia and Poland. That's what I mean. And Vilna was in Lithuania. I'm not sure the city or the whole country. I'm not sure about that detail. But anyway, so what happened was, right as Hitler was coming into Poland, so Russia took Vilna back, away from Poland. So it turned out that Vilna was outside of Poland. So Reb Chaim Moser arranged it that thousands of people should escape the Nazis by coming into Vilna, because it now was Russia, which was on the other side. And he single-handedly arranged for thousands of people to come in and be taken care of, and he was this great genius. And he was so you see this great humility, this person just serving everybody in such a lofty way and using his vast intelligence to do what was needed. That's one story. I think I told you the story of the Chafetz Chaim. I'm not sure if I told you guys. So the Chafetz Chaim, another story of the Chafetz Chaim about humility. One time there was a decree against the Jews. He was also in Poland, the Chafetz Chaim. And there was from the Tsar over there. There was a decree, I think, a bad decree. I think it was drafting the kids young. And the Chafetz Chaim was very old at the time. He was 90 or something, and very weak and small. And he decided he was going to go speak to the Tsar himself. So everyone told him, "You can't go. You're not well enough. It's a hard trip, a hard, cold, long trip, and very difficult." And he insisted on going. He put on his fur coat and he went traveling on train to speak to the Tsar. And it says when he traveled on the train, he was already so famous that people lined up along the train station to get a glimpse of the Chafetz Chaim, and he didn't like that. He was not interested in that. But then he came to the Tsar, and they brought him in front of this very powerful king, and he made his plea. Did I tell you the story last week? Maybe I did. I'll tell you it again. Anyways, it's interesting. He made his plea in Yiddish, and the Tsar didn't understand Yiddish. So he expressed how the Tsar should do the right thing, basically, and that the Jewish people are having troubles, and he has to do the right thing and remove this decree. So basically, the Tsar said, "Okay, I understand what he said." People said, "Do you want to translate?" He said, "No, I can understand that it came from the heart, what he said. I don't need a translation. I understand everything he said, and the decree's off." That's the story. Even though he didn't understand the language, he understood the message, and he understood the sincerity of the Chafetz Chaim. So you have an example of also this great humility and sense of mission, which makes things happen. So, okay, so I guess we should stop here. Very good.
Oh, not yet. Not yet. So
questions, but we can have questions if you like.
Should we keep the papers?
If you like, yeah.
So if I'm summarizing, a real leader